Any representative as yet? Do we have any representative from Berry City as yet?
Yeah.
Hearing none. Berrytown,
Phil Cicchini from Berrytown.
welcome.
Thank you.
Berlin,
Robert Warnick, Berlin.
hello, Bob. Cabot,
Okay.
anybody from Cabot? John? Okay. Callis, uh, Duxbury.
Alan Quackenbush is here.
Hi, Alan. And East Montpelier. Basin. Marshfield. Middlesex. Montpelier.
Donna Bate here.
Hi, Donna.
I appointed she hasn't been appointed in a year and a half.
Excuse me.
You can carry on, Bob. It's just a comment in the room.
Okay. John Lynch.
Here, Moretown.
Northfield. Hi, John. Orange.
Lake Catania for Orange.
Welcome, Lee. And I'm here from Plainfield. Bob Atchison, Roxbury.
Jerry D'Amico, Roxbury.
Hi, Jerry. Waitsfield.
Alice Peel, and I'm joining you from a town hall meeting with Becca Ballant.
Oh, good. And Warren.
Jim Crafts from Warren.
Hi, Jim.
Hi.
Washington. Waterbury.
Mike Hedges, Waterbury.
Hi, Mike. And Williamstown.
Good evening, Rich Turner, Williamstown.
Welcome, Rich. Woodbury.
Michael Gray from Woodbury.
Hey, Michael. And Worcester. Okay, great. Any adjustments to the agenda?
You can make a full quorum without Donna.
Within with that?
Right.
We'll look into it after.
I'm having a hard time hearing you. Sorry.
No adjustments to the agenda.
Okay. Any public comment?
Yeah. Steve Whitaker here.
Go ahead, Steve.
So I'm here because I requested that Country Club Road be placed on the agenda. And because transportation impacts are being asserted and relied upon in ways that are not supported by any completed analysis. I want to be very clear at the outset, this is not a debate about housing or growth. It's about process, safety, and truth in representation.
I'm sorry, he's talking about something on the agenda. It's inappropriate.
That's actually not true. And Donna, you're not an appointed member, so you got no standing that I don't have.
Hold on. It's I'm
All right.
wait.
Hey.
Bob, would you like to do currently your agenda as it's written has public comment at the beginning of the meeting?
Right.
Will you entertain public comment during each agenda item?
If Steve's comments are relative to item number 4, then I would prefer to have them there so they would be more relative to the discussion.
They can wait.
Okay.
Yeah, I can wait.
Thank you, Steve. Anybody other public comments at this point?
This is Dave Stapleton. I may be considered public for this purposes of this. I wanted to comment on the Moortown proposal that's on the agenda along with the 4 others. So happy to wait till then.
All right. we'd honor
Actually-
that.
Mr. Chair, could I make a comment that's not on the agenda? It's reference, it's relevant because it came up at the project review committee. And since then, I've learned, I know Bob Warnicki asked about the Berlin Transportation Garage. And they don't have a permit application, and the project review committee claims they don't have to look at it. Or they refuse to look at it if it's not an Act 250 application. And I've learned from Transportation Agency that they got a decision from the district commission that they're not going to have to apply to Act 250, which means a massive transportation impact project is falling through the cracks of this regional review process due to either dysfunction or misinterpretation of the rules of what you get to look at. But a regional impact of a transportation agency garage and all the trucks and plows and traffic that generate clearly should be on the radar of both the project review committee and the transportation advisory committee, regardless of Act 250.
Thank you. Any comments on that? Okay. Let's move on. Next is the approval of the November 2025 TAC meeting minutes enclosed. Any,
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right. All those in favor of approving the November 2025 minutes, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. The minutes are approved. And the next item is a discussion, town study proposals for TPI funding. Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. The endorsement of Transportation Planning Study Committee recommendations. And that's enclosed in your packet. And we do need to endorse it. So any comments? Presentations? And I guess I missed the staff announcements. I apologize for that.
Yeah, we can do staff announcement quick. Ari, are you still on? Maybe not?
Yeah, she is right below that. Right
Oh,
below
there you
that.
go. Yeah, Kari, if you wanted to introduce yourself to the TAC. So Kari is our recently hired planner who will be I think learning some transportation along the way. But yeah, if you just wanted to give a quick introduction.
Yeah, hi, my name is Cvrpc, an LBD planner doing some transportation work. I'm excited to join Cvrpc.
Thank you. Good to meet you.
Do you have anything, Keith?
Yeah, I just have two quick things. Tomorrow we'll be posting, going out to post for our summer interns. So we're starting that process. And also next week, any of the towns that are applying for the Highway Safety Improvement Program grants, they're small 100% funded grants from $5,000 and $50,000 for the towns. I've been working with Orange and Cabot, both on helping get those put together for them. But those are due next Monday. That's all I've got.
Good. I think that's announcements.
Okay. All right, let's get back to the endorsement of the Transportation Planning Study Committee recommendations. Do we have a presentation on that?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to it. Let me where that is. I can share it.
Scoring was in the packet.
Yep.
Get this shared. Nothing on it. All right. Everybody should be able to see the table here.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if you all recall, Phil Cicchini, Alice Peel, Mike Hedges, volunteered / were appointed to act as a subcommittee to score and discuss the project proposals and return a set of recommendations to the TAC. So you can see the criteria against which these were weighted: regional impact, public health and safety, energy and climate goals, efficiency and maintenance, environmental justice and equity, economic development, relation to adopted plans and phase projects, and availability of other funding. As well as the weights that in consultation that they developed to assign to these various elements in order to generate.
Can you put those up on the screen in the room too? I think everyone has a packet.
I'm gonna have to switch. Screen I'm showing. Should
See that on your phone?
I have to change my sharing situation here. I'm very sorry about that.
I have that.
There we go. So ultimately, you can see what the aggregate weighted scores were. Those are the values in that total score row. And probably it will not have escaped people that despite having the lowest aggregate weighted score, Plainfield was recommended. And this was the result of the conversations that were had when the committee reconvened to discuss their respective scores. And the short version is that the emergency access function of Plainfield's proposed study, desired facility, however you want to phrase it, that was a unique situation, and that given recent history in Plainfield and the vulnerabilities associated with the topography and geology out there, that following that conversation, the decision was made that this should be recommended for study. And then obviously you can see both with Marshfield and Williamstown that the logic behind those recommendations were that the existing centers and particularly the sort of safe routes to schools nexus, I guess you could call it. I mean, obviously very directly with Williamstown's proposal, which is a sidewalk to their schools. And then for Marshfield, trying to develop a complete plan for their village that would connect a school to their library to create a safe path between those two locations. So all projects were certainly recognized as having merit. Moortown, one of the things that came up was the complexity and the time frame on this funding. That this is work that needs to be completed. This money goes away at the end of September, so it seemed like the work of breaking down and breaking out the Moortown work, right? That even that creates something of a time penalty in a situation like this. And then, for Berlin, again, there's legitimate safety concerns, but just less of that existing center and more direct connection. Right, the presence of the schools really pushed Marshfield and Williamstown over in those considerations.
Thanks. Have these towns been notified as yet?
No, nobody's been notified. So that's the understanding that I had from the end of our last TAC was that the subcommittee would develop recommendations, and that ratification of those recommendations would be dependent on on a quorum of the full TAC to ratify, and then at that point we would let towns know that there was money and develop and issue some RFPs to start getting this work underway.
Excellent. So we just need a vote on this to endorse the recommendations?
It looks like Dave Stapleton has his.
Okay, David.
Yeah, before you vote, I would like to speak. Thank you. Yeah, so I actually wrote the Moortown proposal. I'm quite disappointed that it didn't get funded. First, I was pretty surprised at the price tag you put on it. I wonder where that came from, but I also want to point out, even though it focuses on the roundabout, this is a preliminary, an early study, which is going to be part of a much bigger effort, which involves, among other things, safe paths to schools, which we don't have now, namely Crossbrook Middle School, as well as to the housing development at Gallagher Acres. And it also was preliminary to a much larger study about bringing Waterbury wastewater across the river into both North Moortown and Duxbury Corners. And it's really the only opportunity that either of our two towns have for developing housing of any substantial numbers and affordable housing in our two towns. And so I think not getting this is likely to delay our progress on that for as long as a year. I also, looking back at the proposal, it wasn't obvious to me that we couldn't, leave some stuff out and reduce the cost and reduce the time frame. I didn't see where the complexity was, so I'm questioning that.
Thank you for your comments. Jerry?
Yeah. Bob, can we ask Ruben or Keith to give us a quick summary of what the projects are? Because it wasn't in the packet.
Yeah.
It just said there's people here that were not at the last meeting.
Sure.
Sure. Could you do that, Keith and Ruben?
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, I'm bringing those up right now.
As I said, I know some of these I can talk through just off memory. Williamstown was just it was identifying and basically scoping out sidewalk from this high school down into the village. Or from the schools down into the village. Plainfield was looking at the old railroad right of way as a secondary emergency access into the village. So it, due to the fact that Route 2 actually goes underwater frequently in our larger flood events, they wanted to kind of look at, is there another option on access in the village? Moortown was looking at the 100 intersection with Route 2. That area that had been studied previously and had a roundabout design from about 10 or 15 years ago or so. They wanted to update that and do some traffic modeling of that, as well as I think some sidewalk and possibly pedestrian connection there.
Yeah, so there's sidewalk, wastewater extension, and yeah, some modeling of various development intensity scenarios for the area.
Yeah. Marshfield was primarily looking at pedestrian access both to the private school that's there, the schoolhouse commons, and then to the store. So basically,
and there are a number of I guess you'd call them disconnects in their network. So there's some network there already, but certainly some crosswalk and some additional sidewalk and maybe some some planning for sidewalk widening. I think there's some deficient sidewalk out there. So and then figuring out how to do some traffic calming and safe crossing out there.
And then finally, Berlin was looking at Crosstown Road and looking at some traffic calming and pedestrian access along that route. There's a constriction point there with a culvert right there where the water from Berlin Pond flows under the road there, as well as some speed issues and things as you're transitioning from basically coming up to the interstate and then moving in through the village area, the town office.
Thank you.
John Lynch, Moortown.
Go ahead, John.
I don't know how to join in this. I'm new to all this, but I am a 26-year driving instructor. I've been on many Vermont Highway Safety Alliance, blah, blah, blah. I think it's unfortunate. I'm not blaming anyone, but to exclude, okay, what we really need is a safe sidewalk that goes from the corner of Route 2 and 100 to Gallagher Acres, where there are many families and children. I'm just disappointed. I'm new at this whole thing. The roundabout, I love them. I think they're the greatest thing in the world. They're all over the country, but we need to not do the roundabout. We need to get a safe sidewalk for parents and children to get from Gallagher Acres to really Snowfire. You know, we're not asking too much, but I do think whoever recommended the roundabout, I think that's overblown.
Thank you.
So,
David.
may I speak to that? Yeah. So that actually came out of it was actually recommended in the 2012 study. But at the time, the owners of the Hannon Home Center were planning to expand their wastewater system into an area that would interfere with the roundabout. I don't think they actually ever did that. But as a result, the state put in a light, and we have been in discussions for over 3 years with Waterbury, as well as Duxbury and others about bringing Waterbury wastewater across the river. This area is already served by Waterbury drinking water and has been for quite a few years. And if we were to do that, first of all, it would allow replacement of the light with the roundabout because it addresses that very specific issue that resulted in the light there in the first place. But it would also allow a lot more development, more dense housing development, as well as business developments in those parts of Duxbury and Moortown. And So the plan for the sidewalk is already in place down to Gallagher Acres, and there's also a plan for a path to Crossbrook Middle School from that same corner. And so an issue is that if we're going to build that sidewalk, which we would like to do, of course, we would like to know if we're going to also be able to bring in the wastewater, and we want to put the pipe for the wastewater down to Gallagher Acres underneath the sidewalk. So we're not trying to hold that up. In fact, we're trying to get this done so that we can keep that going.
I guess I get that. I would just, as a practical person and a parent and everything else, let's be careful of the safety of children and students versus wastewater. That's all. I'm just verbalizing, but whatever. I
Well,
get
that's
it.
Mike.
I get it.
Mike Hedges, could you comment on that?
You're muted, Mike.
You muted, Mike.
Sure. I just wanted to say that the traffic light was not a reaction to the roundabout or anything else. It was actually one of my projects, the interstate, redecking the interstate in the Waterbury area, the new off ramp that was built there. So there was quite a bit of traffic mitigation as part of that project. And so that's just a temporary light. You'll see that it's on wooden posts instead of strain poles like another light elsewhere. So the agency wasn't married to having a light there. That was put there for a temporary basis. I know that some of the people early in our last meeting, not the selection meeting, but the last one, was concerned that there really wasn't much traffic approaching the roundabout or the intersection, but I've seen a fair amount of traffic approaching from the south to Route 2. It's not, it's like 2 light cycles maybe is about the max I've seen there. But there is traffic coming to that around. Certainly a roundabout would mitigate that very nicely. But the estimate that's in the proposal is from that earlier study, and it's quite low. I think the Waterbury roundabout was over 3 million, maybe approaching $4 million. So they don't give them away. There's a lot of work trying to maintain traffic in one of those, and of course, if you're doing utility work as well, that would be a fairly significant project to have a roundabout there. So that's just my experiences with those types of projects as a former AOT employee. So I just thought I should mention those couple things. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry.
Yeah, I'd like to make the motion to approve the TPI study for Marshfield, Plainfield, and Williamstown for for 2026. If that's the
Do we have a
appropriate
second?
wording.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second. Yeah, Robert Berlin. We're disappointed in the scoring, but I appreciate the process. I agree with the process, and I'll make a second.
Thank you.
Is there more discussion?
I'm asking,
What's that?
is there more discussion? Anybody
Yeah.
else want to raise their hand?
I do, John.
Okay.
I just want to reiterate, I think a roundabout there is overblown and too expensive for the amount of traffic. I did teach education, driver ed, with no light there, just a stop sign. It wasn't pleasant. It was a learning experience, but I don't think it rates a roundabout. And thanks for all your efforts. And I'm sorry to get into this a little late, but I do think a roundabout is way too much money and whatever. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, John.
Yep.
Are we ready for the vote? All those in favor of endorsing the studies for the three towns, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Any abstentions?
Rich Turner abstains from Williamstown.
Okay, thank you.
You'll need to do a roll call for an extension.
Combined vote.
Do that, Rich. Don't do that, Rich.
Do we need a roll call? Keith?
Yes, you'll need a roll call, Bob.
Okay. If I call somebody who's not here, let me, Berrytown, Phil.
Aye.
Berlin, Bob Warnicki.
Aye, it's Warwick.
Let me see, who else? Callis. Nobody? Cabot.
No, I joined late. I
Oh.
vote aye. David
All right.
Ellenbogen.
Okay, thanks, David. Duxbury,
Vote aye.
East Montpelier. No one here? Basin. Marshfield. Middlesex.
Yes.
Thank you. Montpelier.
Yes.
Donna. Thank you. Moortown. John.
Aye. Aye.
Northfield. Orange.
Yes.
Lee. Thank you. And I don't have to vote, but I would vote yes. And Roxbury.
Aye.
Waitsfield.
Aye.
And Warren.
Aye.
Washington. Waterbury. Mike.
Aye.
Williamstown. You said you abstained. Okay. Woodbury.
Aye.
Aye. And Worcester. Okay, if you want to give us a quick tally on that, Keith, but it looks like it's over.
14 ayes,
Unanimously.
1 abstention.
I would say that's passed. Thank you all for your discussion, clarifications, and votes. All right, next item. Presentation and a discussion. Development review process and traffic impact studies. City Montpelier presentation on the proposed Country Club Road, US Route 2 improvements. So take it away.
Mind if I share?
No, not at all. Yeah, so we're gonna start with, Marcel is going to speak to the V-Trans, project development and, project review and impacts, process.
Yes. Thanks for this opportunity. Appreciate being here with you all. So my intent for this is a high level overview, speaking about how the Agency of Transportation comes to get involved in development review, project review, and this mostly happens in two primary arenas: Act 250 land use permits and Section 1111 permits as well. I'll also touch a little bit on traffic impact studies and just to reiterate, this is, V-Trans gets involved on roads to do development projects of our own as well and gets involved in other ways too. But this is really aimed at other developer projects that then we would need to review. And this talks about the jurisdiction and the timing of when we would do that. All right, Act 250. So as folks, I assume, mostly know, but please stop me if you need additional background. Act 250 is Vermont's landmark land use law. It is administered by the Land Use Review Board, an agency of the state, and many state agencies are statutory parties to the proceedings. AOT is one of them. So a development will come before the land use review or their district commission, their regional district commission with a development application. And they are assessed based on various criteria that are outlined in the statute. And the criteria that AOT is concerned with is criterion 5, which asks that applicants demonstrate that their project will do two things: will not cause unreasonable congestion or unsafe conditions on highways, waterways, railways, airports, and airways, and other means of transportation. So essentially any means of transportation, it will not cause unreasonable congestion or unsafe conditions. And then the second piece is, as appropriate, will incorporate TDM strategies, which are transportation demand management strategies, which essentially is a way of saying that it will provide ways of getting from point A to point B that a person may want to use. So this can be a car, or it can be transit or bike and ped facilities or other things as well. And so where appropriate, this criterion is asking developers to make sure that those, basically everything other than just a roadway for a car is being considered as possible. Generally speaking, and I'm going to talk on the next slide about how we go through an Act 250 project, but generally speaking, we're looking for a trigger of 75 or more peak hour trips that are expected to go onto a state highway. And if that is the case, a transportation impact study should be considered, as that's our policy. And I'll talk about transportation impact studies at the end. So just hang tight on that one. Peak hour trips are typically one-way trips in the morning or evening kind of hours when people are going to work and school. That can be different depending on the type of development. Sometimes Saturday morning is the peak hour trip, and so that's just dependent on the development itself. One other thing I wanted to mention is Act 145 transportation impact fees. So apologies that everything is named after a statute, but Act 145 was a statute that was passed back in 2014, I think, that aimed at getting around this last one in pays obstacle and allowed at the time it was the Natural Resources Board, but now it's the Land Use Review Board, to assess a transportation impact fee. Typically, they look at the agency to say when and how much that fee should be, but the authority comes through the LURB. There are instances where the agency can do that, but not in the Act 250 on our own. And so an example of that in this region is up in Berlin at the airport and Fisher Road and Route 62, that intersection there, that is an Act 145 project. So that area on top of the hill there is a development area where lots of things are going in. There's the hospital, there's all the stuff happening in the Berlin town center area. And the agency realized that there was going to need to be an upgrade to that light. That was a capital project. So these all have to be capital projects that are put onto our plan for the year. And throughout this act, we are allowed to ask the LURB to apply these transportation impact fees for developments that come up in that area. And that does not require the 75 or more trips. That can be kind of for anything. In a previous iteration, like before Act 145, what might have happened is that development happened, and then one development comes along and trips it, and that intersection becomes a problem. And then that developer would be on the hook for the upgrades. And that can be fatal to a project depending on how much the upgrades, need to be. And so because this was recognized as benefiting more than just a single developer, this process allows for that to be avoided. All right, quickly, Act 250 participation. Basically what happens is that AOT sees all of the Act 250 applications that come in. We look at everything. We have internal collaboration meetings with staff and various representatives of various transportation modes. From when we need to, this isn't always, but when we need to, we seek input from the regional planning commissions or host municipality if they have questions that they can help with. Applications are reviewed for, of course, traffic congestion and development access and safety, but also bike ped, transit, state airport safety, railroads and rail trails as well. Anything that we are, or it's kind of under our jurisdiction and concern. And again, that transportation impact fee Act 145 comes into the review as well. And then as necessary, we will enter an appearance. If we need to make a comment, we'll make a comment. We can have back and forth with the developers and participate through hearings if we need to. And then of course, just a note at the bottom, AOT projects, some of those do trigger Act 250 as well. And in that case, we are the applicant rather than the reviewer. All right, so that's Act 250. If there's any questions, let me know. I'll keep an eye out. But the next,
What's your review when there's not an Act 250? Or a claim of like not Act 250 not having jurisdiction? Right now, there's a temporary waiver of Act 250 that covers half of this property, but no more. So it's a complicated one.
yeah, I can't speak to a specific property, but if a project does not have, if the land use review board determines that they don't have jurisdiction to issue a land use permit, then none of this happens. We don't, we're not notified. We don't have standing. We don't go through the process. Unless, of course, it falls into this other bucket. So the other bucket is Section 1111 permit. So this, again, is reference to a statute. So it's Chapter 19 of Vermont statutes, Section 1111. And these are state highway access and work permits. And our agency administers these, and they are required when you are performing work in the state right of way. So that could be anything from a new driveway to utilities to setting up a big, like a parking area, anything. If you are performing work on adjacent property that will impact drainage that reaches the state highway right of way, that's a safety concern. Additionally, new subdivision of land that's adjacent to a state highway, even if there's not development proposed, if it's being subdivided, it's important that every parcel has access. And if that access is going to happen from the state highway, we need to know about it so that we can permit where that access can be in a safe way. And then finally, changes in use of development with direct access to a highway. So if property changes from one use to another use, a car wash to a restaurant, for example, we would at least need to consider that. It doesn't always require a Section 1111 permit, but it might. And that would be something that we would review. Section 1111 permits may generate a request for a traffic impact study. Again, I'll talk about that in just a second. I also wanted to note that Section 1111 permits really just apply to state highways. There are, I can't speak to the local permits, but basically there are similar, counterparts of this permits to for local roads. So municipal roads and Class 1 town highways, which are state highways that have been taken over by a municipality for maintenance and development. In those cases, local permits preside and developers would need to go through the local processes.
So Route 2, going by the cemetery, that would be Class 1 that's taken over by Montpelier.
I would need to pull up the map. I'm
Okay.
not sure. Yeah, Montpelier has a wide span, like they have
Yeah.
a lot of Class 1 town highways, and I can't quite remember where it
Yeah.
ends on that side.
They're
Yeah.
most actually in town and state.
I thought that might be the truth. Yeah, they have a lot. And just quickly that this is all done through the principles of access management. So it's important to us as an agency to manage access to land development that both preserves flow of traffic and eliminate or reduces congestion, but then also allows for safety and appropriate speeds and of course safety of the non-motoring public as well. Okay, and then quickly traffic impact studies, I mentioned these. This is like not something necessarily that happens on its own, but it's a facet of Act 250 and Section 1111 processes. What these are a study that typically a consultant will do on behalf of a developer or a town. And they are we generally consider them to be the prudent thing to do when a development generates that 75 or more peak hour trips accessing the state highway system.
Is that per day or per
Peak hour.
2 peak hours?
Peak hour per day.
1 hour.
One peak hour.
1 hour. So if there are 2 peak hours,
It could be like either one can trigger,
you
yeah.
pick either one, not
Mhm.
both.
Yeah, yeah. And the purpose of a traffic impact study is to evaluate congestion and safety, the effects from the development, and its impact on the surrounding transportation infrastructure. So that can be roads, but most of the, like just free flowing roads, most of the time we're talking about an intersection of sorts where you would have the slowdown and people turning and needing to access a development. The traffic impact study would determine if there is an adverse impact, and if there was, it would determine what the mitigation could be. And the way that we know when, I kind of mentioned this, but the way that we know when a TIS, needs to be reviewed or maybe it needs to be asked for would be through the Section 1111 permit applications. Those are administered by us, and we can say through that process, we really think you need to have a TIS done in this section if they haven't done it already. Act 250 permits, of course, we're a statutory party there, and a lot of times developers come in with the TIS and we can review that, but sometimes we need to ask. And then rarely, and there's not like a requirement for this, but if notification is given to AOT for whatever reason, we can get this information from local municipalities or from the regional planning commissions. But those are uncommon avenues. And I can provide this to Ruben and Keith so that you can see it, but I wanted to give you these 2 links to our website. There's a lot of good information here, a lot of handbooks that detail the TISs in particular, what we're looking for in those and how developers should put those together. There's a bunch of FAQs about Section 1111 permitting, how you know you need it, and the process for that. There's also information about Act 145 on here. There's a lot going on these 2 sites, so I wanted to provide those to you. So I'm happy, that was a high level overview, but I'm happy to answer questions if you have any.
Bob, I have a question in the room.
I have another one. You're muted, Bob.
Still muted. Oh, you were unmuted there for a second. Whatever you did there, Bob, worked for a second. Maybe try hitting that button again. Yeah,
Okay.
you're back.
That should be better. I was doing the spacebar thing. Anyway, who has a question?
We had
Christian?
one question from Christian, and then Stephen Whitaker also raised his hand. So with the projects coming in through Section 1111 and a change of use, you said there would be a review. Is it kind of like the equivalent of Act 250 JO? Someone reviews a change of use and decides if it needs to go further? How did they hear about it?
Yeah, that's a good question. We would hear about it if a Section 1111 permit was needed. So like the first threshold is Section 1111 permit. So that would be work in the right of way, activity of some kind in the right of way. It doesn't have to be breaking ground. It just activity of some kind in the right of way or an access to a state highway. So for example, if it was a change of use on a parcel that was like accessing a town road, we would not necessarily hear about it through there because they wouldn't need a Section 1111 permit.
But a change of use for a state highway, they need a Section 11.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if they've got an access, they would need that. Yeah, and like I said, it may not go through a full like permit amendment, or it would just depend what the change was, if it was going to be a massive change of trips generation or trip type, that sort of thing.
There'd be some internal review though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so similar, I guess, to a JO in that way, but
It's a JO?
as a jurisdictional opinion from the land use review board, sorry.
Sorry.
Ready for another question?
Sure.
How about a scenario which we're in, where you have a large city-owned property, but one developer might only be bidding to develop a piece of it. And city's already put a daycare there, and then other pieces of it will be, who's responsible for the overall impacts of a traffic impact study when you don't have a master plan of what you're designing for?
Yeah, yeah, it's a
I've
complicated.
been emailing this with Joe. He's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, I know, yeah. It's a complicated question, because for us, it's not, I'm not quite sure how to answer it. Basically, if the parcel, first of all, we have to meet the trigger. It has to access a state highway.
it does.
Okay, I can't speak to that project,
Right.
but it has to, a hypothetical project would need to access the state highway. If it does, then we're involved. If a land parcel, I think ownership is, we don't have, that's not our purview. If a parcel is being subdivided, we care because each parcel in each subdivision within the larger parcel needs to have reasonable access. And it's possible, depending on how that's laid out, that all those accesses would come down to the state highway. And we may, there have been instances, for example, where we've required, a developer has subdivided into a parcel into 4 pieces. And we've said, okay, for those 4 pieces, you can have 2 accesses. So you need to figure out what you want to do with the frontage road or whatever, because we can't have 4 coming out onto the state highway for safety and traffic flow reasons. So that's one piece of it. And that is very site specific and like how the different accesses would be. And then in terms of like the development itself, it starts to depend more about whether it would trigger an Act 250 review or a Section 1111 review, in which case then we would have entry to be involved and review.
And how about just in the state highway or municipal class 1 highway maintained within the municipality?
Mhm.
A proposal to raise the highway 4 feet for so many hundred yards to try to alleviate the grade differential between the railroad siding going up into the property.
Yeah. I can't really respond to that.
Do you typically, or are you aware of any other project where they allow somebody to just raise a state highway 4 feet?
I am unaware of other projects, but I would not take that as any indication of what our position would be.
That's fine.
The state would decide, all right, whether or not it's appropriate to raise the highway or widen the highway or perform any changes to a state maintained state highway.
I think
Right,
A state maintained state highway.
right, that's correct.
this one's municipally maintained within the city boundaries, so until you get to the city line, which is real close to the end of where they intend to raise it. But I don't think the agency is gonna take lightly to having sightlines obstructed and, but.
Yeah, all I can say to the project that you're speaking about is that, the agency is aware of it. We are happy to review and ready to review when the jurisdictional triggers are hit.
And that means either LURB JO on Act 250 jurisdiction, or here again, that's why I raised the issue. If you've got a parcel with the road being outside the boundary of the Act 250 exemption,
Mhm.
the road and the clubhouse currently are beyond the half-mile buffer that extends from Saban's pasture, which is in the growth center. So the Act 250 exemption extends a half-mile beyond the growth center until I think the end of this year. But it doesn't cover the road and where it impacts it, where it intersects Route 2,
Mhm.
and that's where the proposed imminent water sewer development is gonna be.
Mhm. Yeah, I think you have more details about this, about the potential. I don't even know if I can call it a proposed project, but about the potential project for Montpelier than I do. So I'm sorry, I can't speak more specifically to it. But
I'll keep you up to date.
Any more questions?
So this wasn't in our packet, but you'll put this on the website.
I can send it to you, yeah.
Yeah, we can, yeah, we can mix it into the minutes.
Thank you.
And we are supposed to have a City of Montpelier presentation. Is that person here ready to do that?
Yes, this is Mike Miller from the City of Montpelier. I'm
Hi,
the
Mike. Welcome.
hi. So I am the planning director for the City of Montpelier, and a lot of the innuendo, of course, that has been thrown around is about the Country Club Road project, and that's what we're here to kind of give you some background and information on. And I'm very thankful that Evan Dietrich from PHB is also here because he's a traffic engineer and can help to answer those specific questions that sometimes come up that people have. So a little bit of background on the Country Club Road, in case you aren't aware. The city purchased the Country Club Road property, which was a former golf course. It's 138 acres. We purchased it in 2022. We then followed that with a public input. We paid to have an input process to go on to develop what is called the actionable plan. And that process went through and took a lot of public comment, but also did a lot of background analysis on natural resources. What are the development restrictions we might see and need to be aware of? You know, how developable is this parcel? It was purchased with the intent of building housing and providing additional resource land for recreation. So there was a public process, as I mentioned, and a bunch of studies to decide, all right, where would this, how much potential could the site have, and what would the public be interested in having us move forward on? The first draft of that plan was completed in June of 23, like June 28th or something close to that. And then, of course, as everybody knows, 2 weeks later, we got swamped with the flood. That kind of tabled a lot of the work on this because of all the stuff that was going on for flood recovery. FEMA had, for a time, considered putting trailers up there. That didn't end up happening. But in the end, we're now moving forward with a process of getting that site, getting developers, inviting developers to give us proposals. That's a process that's going on. And we have, as the municipality, our job, what we felt was our job, was to bring the utilities to the site. So we're bringing sewer, we're bringing water from the roundabout down Route 2 and then up Country Club Road. And as a part of that, and if I can just share my screen, if that's okay.
Surely.
What you see here is, so you have the railroad to the left, the building that's to the south at the bottom of the screen, that is Agway. And to the right of that is the gas station and the gas station island, and Casella would be just off the screen. So that gives you an idea if you're familiar with Route 2. Gallison Hill Road would be to the more to the right, would be Gallison Hill Road. And so you have Country Club Road, that's the John Deere dealership. And so what we have been working on, because we're running sewer and water from the roundabout under the bridge and it's coming across, we are wanting to go and do a couple of transportation improvements as we do this project. As we bring water and sewer, we're going to be disturbing soil, and we took the opportunity to go and build out what would be some opportunities to kind of, you know, mitigate a few traffic issues that might come up here. One of them is, you know, there is a rail spur, and after the rail spur, it tends to drop down a little bit steep. So we asked VHB to give us a proposal that council has agreed to, which would start at approximately the line you see there just after the railroad tracks. And there would start to be a grade increase as it comes up to the intersection. And then it has to taper back down, and there's a long taper back down to match the existing grade. So there'd be a small increase of elevation here to try to make it so that way there's less of a jump going up this grade here. And then if I jump up here, now we've shifted, rotated the picture 90 degrees. So Route 2 is now on your left. The railroad is just clipping the corner up there. The building on the bottom is the John Deere dealership. The other thing we asked for on the roadway was to adjust the grade to it varies, but it can get up as steep as like 13.5%. And because of the soil types, it's actually because we're digging this up to put the sewer and water in, it's of course adds cost, adds a couple million. But now would be the time if we wanted to lower the grade and make it an even 12%, which is a much better grade. You can't think of 13.5, 12. What difference? Actually, it'll make a difference. It'll be a noticeable difference. That would help bring the grade up. So those are the transportation improvements. We would be adding a new sidewalk on the west side. That would be the upper part of this screen. There'd be a new sidewalk on this road that doesn't exist today. There'd be a bike lane on the east side, the lower part of this screen, and they would connect up with the bike path at the bottom. So those are a couple of the accommodations that would go in. And then I just wanted to touch on a couple of pieces. First is, Marcella had the great summary of where AOT kind of plugs in. The Act 250. So whether we are exempt now, I mean, obviously it's just state law. I mean, either we are exempt now or this property will be considered for Tier 1A status. That'll be a separate process that we would have to go through with the Regional Planning Commission. In either case, if we got either of those, that would exempt us from Act 250. This is all Class 1 highways, so the 1111 permit doesn't apply to us. But what I would mention to you on the TAC is there is actually a third way that you guys get to plug in. So there are only two ways AOT plugs in, but there is actually a third way that you guys can plug in, and that's through grants and other applications. And that's actually what's coming up now. That's actually why we're here to talk to you, is the city is applying for a community development block grant application for disaster recovery. We're going to be asking for $8 million to help pay for all this. We already have a $3 million award from Northern Borders. But for us to get a letter of support from the RPC, there's going to need approvals from a number of folks. Christian can answer who are all the folks that would need to give us approvals before we can get a letter of support. And we're going to need that letter that basically says this project conforms to the regional plan. So the requirements are different. Obviously, Marcella went through what they use for their criteria. That's not your criteria. Your criteria is the regional plan. And that's what you guys would be going and reviewing this for. Regarding the second thing I wanted to kind of touch on quickly is the traffic impact study. So VHB, Evan, did the work to do a preliminary traffic impact study. You can't do a traffic impact study until you have a project. You need to have a project. A single family home is different than an apartment building. So 130 single family homes will have different traffic impact than 130 apartment buildings, which would be different than senior house, which would be different than a number of things. So you need to have a project before you can do the traffic impact study. But we did a preliminary one to get an idea of what order of magnitude. And that came out about 140 new units, just ballpark, because it could vary greatly. And so we knew going in, because Country Club Road is envisioned to have up to 300 housing units, we knew that at that intersection that you see down there of Country Club Road and Route 2, there's going to have to be a light. We have already planned for, budgeted for, and expect there to be a light, and we're going to be putting that in. The question is, when does that get put in? And that's going to be the warrant will be determined when we have a proposal in front, and we will go through that process. There will be a traffic impact study. That's going to be a requirement. We have a requirement in our zoning for traffic impact studies that is lower than the state. So we at the city will do traffic impact studies that the state sometimes won't require. For the most part, most of Montpelier projects don't go through Act 250 just because of the nature of the town. But our thresholds are lower. So we will be having a traffic impact study on this project to tell us when that traffic light will go in. But that traffic light will go in. What I'm going to leave for Evan is to kind of give a little bit of the discussion of the stuff I can't talk about because I'm not a traffic engineer. I'm a city planner. About some of the capacities of these facilities here. We know there's a road. We know 300 trips will be generated. This is a big road with multiple streets, with multiple lanes and turn lanes and everything else. There's a lot of capacity there, but I can't really speak to the capacity. I can't speak to the quality of this intersection or the roundabout or Route 2. But I wanted to kind of give you that umbrella description of what we're looking at and the fact that we're not trying to skirt doing a traffic impact study. We are going to do a traffic impact study. It probably will not go through AOT, but those are but we're going to do our best. We're going to coordinate with the state, and we have traffic engineers on board. So I guess, Bob, if it's okay, I'm going to have Evan give a quick thing, unless you want to have those questions answered first. I'll leave it up to you as to whether you want Evan to go first or not.
Sure. Go ahead, Evan.
Sure, yeah. Good evening, everyone. So US Route 2 is a Class 1 town highway, as Mike mentioned, but certainly a major artery through the state, being a US route. It is fairly wide. It has one lane in each direction, plus a center turn lane, two-directional center turn lane. It also has wide shoulders today. So that's a pretty robust roadway, and we would build it back the same way, although we're talking about raising the grade about 2.5 feet to better accommodate the intersection at Country Club Road. We would build it back with roughly the same cross section. If and when the light were to go in, we could easily convert the center turn lane into left turn lanes, dedicated turn lanes, one for Agway and one, of course, for Country Club Road. So Route 2 is really well set up to accommodate a development of this sort. Country Club Road is a two-lane road. There's one lane uphill, one lane downhill. We would rebuild it like that, and that also would offer a lot of capacity. What we don't feel with what has been kicked around for ideas up on the hill, that even dedicated turn lanes would be needed for Country Club Road. A single lane at a traffic signal can accommodate quite a bit of traffic. So the configuration currently envisioned, in the vacuum of not having the traffic study yet, we feel that probably the one lane up, one lane down configuration would continue to work well, even under a future development scenario. So the plans that Mike showed are what we came up with for a concept, and we feel that that would work pretty well, given what's being talked about up on the hill with the level of development that's really envisioned by the city. There also is the other possibility that this may not be the ultimate only access for this development. There has been talk of possibly connecting over to East State Street in the city to make a close of the loop, and that would obviously take quite a bit of traffic if that were to be opened up, and that would result, of course, in less traffic even than down at the bottom of the hill. But, for our planning purposes right now, we are considering all the traffic to be focused going up and down Country Club Road and coming out to US Route 2. And we feel that it'll operate fine if and when we need that signal, when the volumes are increased by enough with the single lane approaches on Country Club Road and Route 2, more or less like it is today.
Thank you. I see some hands up. Alice, please.
Yeah, where did the rotary go? I mean, I'm looking at that very nice sketch, but where's the rotary? Where is this road? Where does this road connect to the rotary that's there? That should be on the railroad tracks to the west, so it would be just off of the picture that Mike showed. Sure, and how would it connect, or just all the lanes would feed in to the one rotary? Or does work have to be done to the rotary doing?
No, today from Route 2, as you approach the rotary, it's a single lane into the rotary. And that would be the case after this development went in. There would be no change to US Route 2 lane configurations, other than, as I mentioned, the center turn lane at the intersection would become dedicated left turn lanes, most likely. But no change at the rotary.
And you're going to do traffic study of the number of, I mean, you're combining numbers of trips coming out of the Country Club Road. Okay, you're going to look at number of trips there. Do you combine them with the number of trips going through the rotary?
Well, looking at the rotary would be a separate matter. And I would think that because it is so close, that the effect on the rotary would also be looked at when the traffic study is prepared.
I would hope so, because I think
that would be sensible.
We're looking at a lot of trips. And then my other question was, in terms of beginning this project and being exempt from Act 250, the first step that I think Mike is saying he's planning, or Montpelier is planning, is to go for the Tier 1A designation. And that would have to be done and accomplished first to be exempt from Act 250? And why is this not a AOT 1111 project?
Yeah, I can answer that in backwards order first. So it's not an 1111 because we all the roads, including this part of Route 2, is a Class 1 highway. And because a Class 1 highway is city maintained and not state maintained. But our engineering department, we have an engineering department in our DPW. So we have 3 or 4 civil engineers who work for the city, who do traffic and do all of this stuff. So that's why AOT doesn't have to do it, because we have the engineers that do it. But as they work on these projects, they always are going to go back and consult with AOT on what their opinions are on any of these projects that we have going. So this would be one that, as we build this project, as we start moving this from what we call 30% to 60% designs and 90% designs, it's going to have some AOT input to decide if they've got some adjustments that they want. And then the other question was
being Act 250.
Act 250 exempt. Yes. So right now we are partly exempt, and that's something that will sunset at some point, whether it's this year or next year. There'll be some sunsetting, but we have some exemptions to the property itself from Act 250. So whether it's Tier 1A, Tier 1B, or it depends when the projects get going and what the proposal is. But obviously, if we don't get Tier 1A and don't get Tier 1B, then we'd have to go through Act 250. It's just a process that adds a year to the process. While we can permit move projects relatively quickly, the Act 250 process would be a much slower process. So we would just have to go and slow things down. And
yeah, okay. All right, thanks.
Jim Crafts.
Hi, thank you. So I'm just trying to get some clarity around, I heard reference made that you're asking for act approval for a grant application around, and I thought I heard this, this is flood recovery?
Correct. This is a CDBG-DR.
How is this project related to flood recovery?
Okay, so the state, when the state got the disaster recovery funding, so when there's a flood, there's a portion of money that goes to HUD, that goes to CDBG-DR, Community Development Block Grants, Disaster Recovery.
Yeah.
And there are rules set for how to spend that money. And a big chunk of the money that the state of Vermont, when they set up their rules, a big chunk of their money was for building new flood resilient neighborhoods. And so you can apply for funding to build infrastructure to build flood resistant neighborhoods. So Berry City got funding for Prospect Heights. Plainfield was applying. I mean, these are some of the big ones that everyone has heard of. Plainfield had applied for some funding. I don't think they got funding because they're still not sure about the property security there. But those are the types of projects that you can get infrastructure money to build resilient neighborhoods. And that's what we're applying for.
Okay, so basically this is a flood resilient new neighborhood.
Correct.
That's okay. Thank you.
Okay. David.
Yeah, I was wondering, excuse me. I was wondering if you could show on the diagram and explain how the Cross Vermont Path Trail will cross the entrance of the road.
All right. So whether we're looking at it from this angle, maybe it's a little easier from the other angle. Here's the cross Vermont. It crosses the rail spur right to your left. I don't know if you can see my cursor as it moves across the screen, but it comes up to Country Club Road as it does today and then crosses. As we elevate the road, there will also be a related elevation to the Cross Vermont Trail, the shared use path to come up, and then it'll be adjusted and come back down on the other side. So there's going to have to be some grade adjustments to match that to the elevated roadway.
Will there be any signalization for bikes and pedestrians there, or a different texture to the roadway for the section that's crossed?
I think I would have to go and there are guidelines for all of these as to whether there's a requirement. Evan may be able to answer those. I'm not familiar with the details of the PED crossing, whether if there's a light that necessitates that cycle, or whether it's just stop signs or other requirements.
Yeah, I think for a path, if there was no signal there, so maybe initially, if there was no signal there, we would have stop signs on the path, like you see in other areas. If and when the signal goes in, then there would likely be a dedicated pedestrian signal for the path crossing, just given the expected volumes of the path. Typically, we would paint a crosswalk, a white crosswalk, in a situation like this, but it could be other things too. It would just have to be something worked out with the city.
Yeah, I mean, one of the thoughts that comes to my mind is if there, at some point, well, early on, there'll be a stop sign, then there'll be a signal at some point, a traffic signal for vehicles, motor vehicles. If there's a stop line there, how do we know that cars that are backed up at the stop sign or at a red light aren't interfering with the rail crossing?
Well, that's a very good question. We've thought about that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. There's a lot going on right at the intersection, right? So you have the path very close to the road, and then from the road about 75 feet away is the rail crossing. So it makes it a bit difficult to figure out where to put all of the different controls for people crossing the road. One way to do it would be to possibly set the stop bar all the way back before the tracks. And everyone would have to stop when there's a red signal at the bottom. Everyone would have to stop before the tracks. That's one way to do it, although that will result in people being pretty far from the intersection. There could be gates potentially added to the rail, where then you could have, for a lot of cycles, for the traffic signal, you could have 2 or maybe 3 cars that could stop closer to Route 2, but not yet back to the tracks. And you would have this small queuing area where people could set up, and they would then release from much closer to Route 2. That may need to have be accompanied by gates at the rail crossing, though. So all of this would have to be worked out with Vermont Rail Systems. They've already heard from us on the project, and they understand what we're trying to do here, and they're okay with it. But that whole operation of the signal and where the stop bars are, and if there are gates needed, and all that sort of thing would have to be worked out in more detail once we start to get into looking more seriously at the traffic signal.
Have you been in touch with Greg Western at the Cross Vermont Trail headquarters?
We haven't talked to Greg.
Will you?
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
sure,
I'm sure that
yeah.
we can talk to Greg at any point.
And I know
Yeah, we're very conceptual here, and we'd be happy to have Greg's input on something like this as well. Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I guess the one thing I would add about, just so people are aware with the spur, you can even see it in this picture. Just you see the rail cars with the stones in it, and if you look about maybe 100 feet, maybe 200 feet farther, the rail line ends. You're talking about a rail spur that literally just goes a little bit past this intersection. We're not talking about trains coming through here. It is literally where they store empty cars. It's a very low traffic, low load, low hazard area in comparison to the larger line that you see that crosses Route 2. That's a much more substantial line that runs all the way out to Berry City. So that's a much bigger line that has just been rebuilt. It's got all of its as the phrase goes, it has all the bells and whistles for that one.
Mm-hmm. Alice.
Yeah, quickly. Everyone should read Monica White from Green Mountain Transit as a post that she put in the chat that I find interesting. Thinking of potential future public transit service in that location. If the grade of the road can be less steep, as just noted, that would help ensure that our buses can safely serve that area in winter weather. So there's a concern I think you should look at. I would assume public transit would be part of what you want to provide at a development this big.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. We have been in touch already with GMT about possibles. We actually talked to them because we have the daycare facility up there right now. We talked about would they have some routes that could include that to help people get kids out there and get families out there. And they said, no, not at this time. There's not enough traffic. But if there was housing out there, that the presence of the daycare would certainly help them to be able to make a determination of when routes might be there. I think Evan mentioned briefly about maybe going to East State Street with a road. The most likely loop that would probably go through is to actually loop back down to Berry Street. This, if people aren't from Montpelier, you might know Country Club Road is on the east. Its partner to the west is Sabin's Pasture, which also is a large vacant parcel that also wants to be developed. Well, each access road is kind of coming up, and there's a small gap in the middle. If we connect that gap, we could then send a bus up one side and down the other, and it wouldn't create a lot of through traffic. That's not a shortcut for anyone. But it would allow for secondary access. It would allow for buses to have a better loop. It would allow for other bicycle and transportation opportunities to go through that way. But that we'll look at that warrant when we have a project, when we have a proposal to determine how best to, whether that's the best route.
She's just citing the height of the grade as something to look at, and I agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep. Yeah, because you don't want to get high centered. Some of these longer vehicles, a larger bus, you've got to watch that you can't get high centered when you have the front wheels go over something and then it comes back down. You can get vehicles, tractor trailer trucks and other things that could get high centered. Raising it on both sides helps to even it out. You can't get high centered as often in different situations. So not that it has been a problem here, but again, we want to be thinking ahead to make sure that isn't something that comes up later on.
Good. Thank you for the question. Thanks for the explanation.
Bob, I have a question in the room.
Okay, who's that?
Sure, that was Christian Meyer. I guess this would be for Evan. Are there other constraints you consider with a traffic signal in an area like this besides just volume of trips in and out of Country Club Road?
Other things you look at for a signal are things like accident history. Is there an accident history here? This is not currently a high crash location, but that's one example of other things you may consider. In this case, I don't know that there's a whole lot more that would go into it besides meeting the warrants for the traffic volumes. And there are a number of these different volumes. It's peak hour, 4 hour, or 8 hour, different types of warrants that we look at when we look at a traffic impacts study and trying to figure out whether or not we should be putting in a signal. Sometimes too, you look at proximity to other signals and things like that. But again, not in this case.
Okay, because that kind of gets to my question. Proximity. We talked about the rail line, proximity to other intersections and curb cuts. No red flags you're seeing.
No, it's a little bit wonky having the Agway driveway offset a bit. And, I think that we would look at not realigning Country Club Road, but possibly talking to Agway about moving their entrance over a couple of parking spaces and just doing a swap on their side of the street. So there's a better alignment there. That may or may not be part of what's needed, but it would be something that we would look at.
Thank you. Any more discussion?
Yeah, I'm still waiting for my agenda comment slot. Steve Whitaker.
Okay.
So
go ahead.
I'm glad to see that people are paying attention and asking questions, but what you've heard between the lines is that there is an intention to skirt Act 250 review and V-Trans review of a project. You also need to know that this project is not in our city plan that was approved by the regional commission. The planning commission, in writing the city plan, was told to leave Country Club Road out. That's being handled on a different track, and that's on the record. And so the level of avoidance of scrutiny and avoidance of due diligence and the presumptions that you've heard about regional plan compatibility. This area, at least until the next regional plan is completed, is mapped in the regional plan as rural. And rural and 300 to 500 units of housing plus 100 student daycare are not compatible. So we're basically, not to mention a brownfield, which has yet to be fully delineated. So we have the potential of needing hundreds of truckloads of soil to be removed and replacement soil to be brought in while there's an active daycare. And so this thing has so many unresolved issues to it, but I'm going to finish my comments because it sits on an undelineated brownfield. It lacks a supplemental site investigation, which is a brownfield required term by the state RELA program. It has no traffic study completed. It has no traffic plan for during construction. It has no transportation review by V-Trans or the Regional Planning Commission. Yet developers are being told on a site visit and in writing that the traffic is not a problem and that 140 plus units could be supported without a signal. There's absolutely no basis for those assertions, and yet that's what Mike Miller told the developers at the site visit. That assertion traces back to a single line in an appendix of Whitenberg's actionable plan, which is not a traffic study. it was mischaracterized. It's an assessment, and it has no quantified analysis to support that claim. Country Club Road itself has grades, as you heard, 14% plus. In places, it's not designed for sustained construction traffic, nor for hundreds of daily vehicle trips. And even the proposed upgrade is not designed for that many. I'm glad somebody asked about the rotary, because the rotary is already in a failing level of service, and it's just a short distance down the line. So to put another traffic signal in right that close to a failing level of service rotary into this many car trips, I think we should be thinking about this as, and back when we were pursuing a growth center, I raised it, that we should have been pursuing a new town center and design this more as a pedestrian village, not a commuter destination. And they ignored it, and there will be, so currently,
So
any
Steve,
what?
so thank you for your comments. Do
Oh,
you
no,
have
I'm
more?
not done. Yeah, I have more.
Well, I would like to try to limit your discussion to a reasonable amount of time, because some of the
I'm sure you
issues,
weren't. I mean, I'm the one who asked to get this item on the agenda,
It's-
and then it got packed with an hour of somebody else's spin. So
excuse me, but I would just like to ask that you keep your questions and discussion relevant to the Transportation Advisory Committee, because there are some issues you're talking about that involve planning and whatever else. So please limit it. And we also don't have an exact time limit, but just be courteous, step up and step back. I appreciate that.
okay, well, I want to put it in a broader context. I heard from Secretary of Transportation that if a project doesn't trigger Act 250, his agency's not going to conduct a review. That means if Act 250 is avoided, no one conducts a review, and the transportation impacts, unless this transportation board affirmatively insists on it. If we're seeing that exact pattern here, the V-Trans, I've already alerted you to the V-Trans equivalent for this site garage, the new Berlin garage. The result is a regulatory blind spot, projects with major traffic impacts. And again, I'll remind you that what you're hearing is selected subsets of what might go on up at Country Club Road. This developer might be invited to build 2 or 4-story apartment building. A different developer might be invited to build 20 or 40 or 60 housing units or townhouses. The childcare has a 10-year lease or a 5-year renewable for another 5. So those collective transportation impacts are not being evaluated anywhere. And that's a real problem for a project of this magnitude, especially when they're trying to skirt Act 250 and potentially skirt the regional plan review and potentially skirt Act 250. Yeah. So I'm also concerned about how transportation issues are framed by staff. The public records requests show that staff communicated with Miller anticipating public comments and characterized them as misinformation before any traffic analysis exists. That's not professional, and it's not how advisory committees should be supported. The Transportation Advisory Committee exists to evaluate evidence, not to ratify assumptions. So finally, I want to flag something. The city is floating a conceptual plan to raise Route 2, affecting line of sight issues and pretending like it's no big deal. It has serious implications for cost, safety, not only for car and truck traffic, but for the bicycle traffic, as you just heard. So it's not been analyzed, reviewed, or approved. The problem is that this analysis and a full master plan for this project is necessary to be reviewed before developers are granted reliance and potentially have legal clause. The city's proposing to give away the most developable 40 acres for $1. And at that point, things get locked in and you've lost your chance to affect them, no matter how many different projects are combined into a limited traffic intersection. So I'm here to give you the warning.
All right. Thank you for your comments. Keith or
You have
Ruben?
Donna's hand
We
is
don't
up.
need any action on this tonight, do we? This is for a
Bob, no
future.
action, but Donna's hand is up.
And my question
Right.
related to that, I was wanting to know when Michael needed the letter and what we needed for action to do that.
Right.
I can jump in there. So when we get a request for a letter, it would go before the Board of Commissioners, the Regional Board of Commissioners, or potentially the Project Review Committee, depending on the timing. They will be meeting in February 10th is their next meeting. And then not again until March with, again, there's an intermediate committee that would be able to review a letter potentially. I think the goal of tonight was, I don't want to speak for TAC staff, it was fact finding, getting an open discussion to hear about the project, learn more, invite commissioners to participate, ask questions. And sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Yeah, I think until we have a clear ask, it'll be hard to conduct any sort of analysis on what project is being considered.
I would agree. It
Yeah.
seems like there's a lot of moving pieces at this point. Alice, comment.
Just remind me, what is the letter for? What would the letter be?
Could be a compatibility letter, as we've discussed in the past, Alice, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, this is for the CDBG-DR, Community Development Block Grant, Disaster
Correct.
Recovery Funding.
Correct. That application is due at the end of February. So February 27th, 24th, I'd have to go and look it up somewhere in that range. So yeah, that's what we'd be looking for, is a letter of conformance. What would letter of support, letter of conformance, so that way we can include that with our application.
Okay, then I'm going to say something here. We've gone through now discussions in the Board of Commissioners about receiving these what we call quick turnarounds. Like it's due tomorrow, so we need the decision tonight. On behalf of the Board of Commissioners and the Executive Committee, I would really like to have the application and the full description of the grant so that we can make an informed decision, not some kind of quick 48-hour decision. You know, I'm not saying you're going to do that. I'm just saying we've gone through this and it's, I think, a problem.
Yeah, at this point, we have the application. What you saw today, what I put on the screen is actually the application. Remember, the DR application has, I'll say it this way. It has nothing to do with what's going on in Country Club Road. Of course, it all does. The application itself is for the infrastructure. So the grant that we're applying for is with regards to the infrastructure, and we've kind of laid out and shown you what would be the physical changes that grant would bring about. We've also tried to explain the background. We can obviously get more of an application to you, but we have, it was a couple of weeks before this, so we're 6 weeks in advance that we were talking. We're now a month in advance of needing a letter of support. So we're trying to get this information out to you as early as possible, so that way you have a chance to see them and kind of understand them. But as we said, pieces of this are still open, and that's why we tried to take the time to explain it to you. Physically, these are the changes we're making. This grant will not put a light at the bottom. A light will be put at the bottom when the development necessitates it, and the city will pay for that. The city already acknowledges when that development crosses that threshold, whatever that warrant threshold is, at whatever project gets proposed, there is going to be a traffic impact study. The city is going to review that as we review all, and we take these very seriously. The city is not just willy-nilly ignoring these things and letting stuff go. We take traffic impact studies very seriously. We review them. We push back on developers. The city would push back on VHB on theirs, and vice versa. We would be pushing back if we think that there's something that doesn't meet engineering standards, and we would be putting the warrant in for when that traffic light is needed. And
Yeah.
it's just going to be a local process and not one that goes through Act 250.
Right, but the letter is for specifically for the grant.
Specifically for the grant, specifically
Okay.
for these are the road improvements we intend to make with this grant, with the understanding that this is intended to support a larger project up there, but the letter of conformance is with the grant project itself.
Okay.
Well, as you know, Mike, the TAC meets on the fourth Tuesday, which will be February 24th. So if you want an approval of a letter on that date, I would suggest that you get something into all the members of the TAC, maybe a couple weeks before, so we have a chance to review it, look it over. We've got a good flavor, I think, tonight of what you're proposing to do. But if we could just have a little bit more solid stuff in writing, that would be a courtesy to all of us. So thank you.
Yeah, I'll work with Christian and Ruben to get what's necessary.
All right, Mike Hedges. Unmute, please.
Is that the responsibility of the TAC or the primary planning commission for the RPC?
I'll
I'll
defer to
jump in.
Christian on that.
Yeah, this is Christian Meyer. We do have a process in place for these letters. They ultimately have to come from, from the Board of Commissioners, but our project review committee, which is another one of our committees, another one of our advisory committees, can issue one that the Board of Commissioners would then ratify after the fact. However, like any advisory committee, the TAC could make a recommendation to the Board of Commissions if and when you had all the facts. Given the deadline on this, I think we would try to put a full description in a Board of Commissioners packet well before the end of the month, well before the end of February. So I know there's a lot of commissioners on this committee, and so that voice will, I think, the information absorbed tonight, I hope will make it into our commission meeting through those representatives.
Okay. Thanks for the question and the clarification. Any other comments? Okay, let's move on then to members. There we go. Anyway, the TAC member roundtable is coming up. Mike, did you have something else?
Yes, I made a last minute offer to share screen and show the commission members here the most recent governor's recommended budget for transportation. I know that it's been a long meeting already tonight, and that maybe I could do that next time, but I'd be glad to show everybody how to read the governor's recommended transportation budget and show how they can find out information about their particular projects and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'd really like to see that, Mike. I mean, it can be at the next one. I mean, it depends on how long people want to stay on.
Yeah, I think I'd rather have a little bit more time to work. Yep.
Right. Will you put that on the agenda, please, Steph? Thank you. For the 24th. Anybody else have a roundtable item they would like to talk about in their town? Okay, hearing none.
Yeah, Bob.
Do I have a, yes,
Bob, given the late time of the day here, I'd like to make the motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any abstentions or negatives? Okay, thank you much.
Thanks all.
Good night.
Good night.
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 Aye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thanks. Yeah, good to do it.
Did you apply for the high step grants this year? The HSIP, the one you guys removed the trees with? Did you apply for that grant this year, the highway safety? I say, because that was the one you guys, yeah, the small scale one.
Something else, yeah. So, we were doing another one to add on, well,
Cause you cut them.
the resilient, you know, energy.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we had an interview last Friday.
Okay.
And, I sent a follow-on letter, they're making a determination this week. I'm now going through the student.
Right up.
And so we'll see.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll keep going for more.
Heck yeah, heck yeah.
Drive through Williamstown all the time and I looked at that lane, you know, where I'm like, there's a little sidewalk on the bridge there. And I'm thinking, where do you get them here? That's great, I'm glad.
Yeah, you'll have to request.
Yeah, right, hopefully.
Just send an email to Cvrpc.
It doesn't get posted.
Sidewalk on the other side of the road.
The non-advisory will get posted by default. The other ones are just kept for 3 years.
In school and grown up. Construction whole road.
So you
get
can-
one, we got the other one, so we're gonna try.
Videos.
Try to hit them all.
Another page.
In lifetime, but yeah.
I have to look at it, I just don't all that often, but I think it
So
will
we're
stay.
like, thought that we actually crossed just before the bridge.
Video will be removed.
Veterans.
30 days,
Oh, yeah.
20 days.
You know, a long time.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm asking.
That like that. It's a-
Oh, interesting.
That
Yeah,
notice
there's
hasn't
a
appeared
picture
yet.
there.
Okay. So,
Folder stuff.
yeah, we'll.
And you got a litigation hold notice.
Yeah.
There was that whole section there involved. I know.
But my point is that
Yeah.
taking,
Cool. Well, exciting that that you.
yeah, so
Take a
far,
look at it.
in my experience, every committee's videos have been posted.
We did post them for a while, but we had no policy. Now that we have a policy,
You're not posted.
we're posting all non-advisory. Advisory committees are available by request.
So I'm gonna have to make a standing request.
Yeah, I think we can entertain that.
I just need enough time to.
It's easier to send you a link to them than it is to. Post every single one up.
Oh, I
that
see.
time, right?
I thought I just take the Zoom link and paste it onto a website.
You basically, we gotta edit the web. You gotta go in there, the editor. You
Heck
gotta
yeah.
take it
Yeah.
down, get it. It's 30 seconds here and there.
How about Google?
Like just sheet staying.
They could just all.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
Montpelier's complaining that they spend too much time answering public records requests, so just say, just put them in a spreadsheet. Once.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Oh, I know what you did. I know.
You know,
Or,